again. Big opening, pass 5, pass 10, Perko command, and he goes all the way to the 15-yard line. 17 yards out of there.
Welcome back to the Believe in Badgers podcast on the Believe Podcast Network, presented by betonline.ag. Once again, I'm Matt Perkins, joined, as always, by Badger legend, the Hebrew Hammer himself, Matt Bernstein. Bernie, how we doing today?
Every day of the pod is a holiday, baby. I'm very excited. We got somebody super special, a super champion in this world, a Super Bowl champion. I think that's like what we all want to become one day. Not a lot of us reach that level. So it is a pleasure, I think, today with who we're going to speak with.
Yeah, we got David Edwards, the former Badger, now Buffalo Bill, which I will try to tone down my excitement as much as possible.
We just skipped over like everything else, but to the Bills, baby.
Yeah, to the Bill. Yeah, that's what I do, David. Thank you so much for taking some time with us today.
Of course. Yeah, thanks for having me, guys.
Dude, if you bring a championship to the Bills, this dude will never, ever stop. You will be his best friend. They'll send you a card every year. Oh, man.
Hey, I love it. I love the passion. That's big time stuff.
It's like
big time stuff.
It is like I know I have like two like real passions like outside like my family, you know, and the Badger football and the Buffalo Bills. And when you get someone who he brings them both together like me, I just I get a little bit extra excited.
David, ask him a question. How many tables have you jumped through?
Oh, that's a scary question. I don't know if I want to ask that.
Me personally, I want to say like 4.
Only 4?
Okay.
Yeah, 4.
Okay, that's pretty
4 or
good.
5. Most of them actually.
That's still a lot of tables.
Most of them while I was living in Madison and playing rugby and had a lot less general regard for my body. So
that was before the Bills Mafia.
No, Bills Mafia has always existed, my friend. That was they just got good and then people noticed. This has been happening for a long time. These are traditions. I mean, I saw this when I went to my first game at what was that? 1993, I want to say 93, 94 against the Colts. Yeah. That was happening in the parking lot then. So, I personally wasn't. It was I think it was my 8th birthday, 9th birthday. My parents took me for my first Bills game. Yeah. So,
awesome.
Anyhow, that's probably way too much information. Plus, we're here to talk about David. Before we get into any more of this, got to remind you guys that we are presented by betonline.ag, where they remain your number one source for all of your online sports wagering needs. You name it, they've got it over there at betonline.ag. So head on over to the website or use your mobile device to sign up today. Use our promo code BELIEVE, that's BLEAV, to receive a 50% welcome bonus on your first deposit at betonline.ag. BetOnline, where the game starts. Let's start way back, Bernie.
Way back. Like way back to little David. Was there ever a little David?
It's funny. My dad is 6'2", and the running joke with like our family friends and stuff like that growing up was I was really big Dave, he was little Dave. So that kind of tugged at him a little bit. But I don't know. I was always a pretty tall kid, kind of stayed on that trajectory, I guess you'd say, for kind of my whole life. So I've always been a pretty big dude.
But when does, I guess, big little Dave put on like a helmet or like think about football as a sport to jump into?
That's a good question. So my dad played college football at Indiana. My cousin Garrett played football at Illinois. And when I was a little kid, my cousins Tommy and Garrett were like my heroes. They're about 10 years older than me. I can remember going to their games as a kid. I actually my mom bought me a like replica helmet of what the high school helmet looked like. It was the not old school, but the Michigan Wings, just in the colors of our high school. And so ever since I was a little kid, football was like the coolest thing in the world to me. And I would bring, that replica helmet to show and tell every time. Like football was just a really big deal to me. And I'm not really sure if it was just the exposure when I was a kid or because I was just I don't know. So really young, I'd say probably like 4 years old was the first time I put on a helmet.
Oh man, that's early.
Yeah, I wasn't playing football, but I was like, "What? This is awesome, really cool," and just so passionate about it at a young age.
Did it ever feel like, because like so many people in your family were playing, that you were forced into it, or was it just like all natural, just like you knew it from the time you started watching, this is something you wanted to be a part of as well?
Yeah, I always felt like it was natural. My dad and my mom, they never pushed playing football on me, and I just thought that, going back to like my cousins, like I just thought that they were so cool, and they, their teams were good. And Friday nights in the fall were like a really big deal. And I feel like that was just naturally ingrained into me, was, how cool this game could be. And just that my family was so passionate about it too. It just naturally rubbed off on me like, wow, this is a pretty neat thing.
That's very cool. My daughter can say football. She's 2. That's the only sport she knows. Like this, because we watch football on mute, and I force her to watch it. So I'll be watching you a bunch. Let's be real,
awesome,
because that's what channel we get on the East Coast. But that's exciting. So when do you is it second grade, third grade, fourth grade? Like when do you start playing organized football?
I played. So I grew up going to Catholic school, and they had a 5th grade. Once you hit 5th grade, you could start playing sports. So they had a football team, and that's when I started. I did like flag as a little kid. I want to say that started around like 1st grade. But when you put like helmets and shoulder pads on, that's like real stuff. So 5th grade was when I started, and then just been grinding through ever since.
Well, but when you start, what position are you playing? Because I mean, you weren't even recruited as an offensive lineman. You've gone through a lot of iterations, if I've done my research right. So you've played, insofar as I can tell, pretty much every position that there is in both modern offense and like the veer. And, I don't know if you're playing single wing or something, like, who knows? It seems like you played everywhere. So what were you playing at first, at least?
Yeah, it's funny. My first position, so they had the striper rule. You had to be a certain weight. I forget what it was. I think it was 105 pounds when you were in 5th and 6th. And when you got to 7th and 8th, it was 135, let's say. And I was always over that limit. So you had the stripe on your helmet. And so I was an offensive and defensive lineman. So I started out as a tackle and as a guard. And that was 5th through 8th grade. And then, kind of circling back to my cousins, when I got into high school as a freshman, I was like, I am done playing O-line. Like, I want to play quarterback. Like, this is my dream type thing. And I started out, funny though, as an offensive lineman and ended up as an offensive lineman. So
2 completely different leagues though.
Yeah, totally. Yeah.
But so wait, you said 9th grade, you're like, listen, I'm switching. I want to be QB. Because I guess once you take off the weight limitations, really that's when people can like flourish in different positions. Was that was the start of the quarterback?
So yeah, I went from, I was a guard or a tackle in middle school. And then when I got to high school, I was a quarterback and a free safety, like the complete opposite of what I had known. And yeah, I mean, I had a dream of playing quarterback because my cousins did it. And that was always my goal, was to play quarterback. And not that I didn't want to play offensive line, but you guys can relate. Like, you have something in your mind, a dream, a goal. Like, if I wasn't good enough to play that position, I would have had no problem playing tight end or offensive line like I had been used to. I just wanted to give myself that opportunity, and it was like the coolest thing in the world to me.
Listen, that's so cool to go from O-line to, usually you're kind of tracked and you're stuck in these positions when you get out of the helmet I call it the fat shaming era, because I had a double X. So you had the stripe. It's no better. It's basically saying you're too big to touch a football as you play football. It's kind of a joke. Still obviously hurts. But so when So when do you start like feeling like, wow, I'm getting into the groove, like I'm really playing at a high level, like maybe this could be something I use to get to the next level?
Like I told you, my dad played college football, and he told me a story when I had probably 2 or 3 years into my college career at Wisconsin. I'm just like oblivious to everything when it comes to that stuff. But my dad told me that after my sophomore year, he and the coaches at my school were like, "Hey, we think this kid has an opportunity to play at the next level." Now, that didn't really become a thing until after my sophomore season. We had a good year. We went to the quarterfinals. And I remember Mike Ward, who was the linebackers coach at University of Illinois, he came to our school and sat down with me and my high school coach, like, "Hey, this is who I am. We're interested in David." And it was like, whoa. And so that was really the first time where I was like, wow, I think I can actually, do this at another level. And then it became, well, what position does he play? What are we going to recruit him as? Which is another, story. But after my sophomore year, I think it hit me like, wow, I think I can do this.
And so wait, you guys are running the veer option?
So the old
you were running the triple option,
Oh yeah. So it was a really old school offense. We didn't have a ton of formations. We called it Volt, veer, option, lead, and trap. Those were our 4 main plays. And then we had like another, midline option. So I guess you call it 5, but super old school. The reason we still ran it was because that was a very rare offense you would find in the west suburbs of Chicago. And if you made it to the playoffs, you had an immediate advantage because no one else ran that offense other than, if you're familiar with Chicago football, Mount Carmel, who wins state championship after state championship. Now they've, upgraded their offense, but I was running an old like 1970s, 80s offense. And because I was so big, I felt like I just would, if the guys at least got their feet past the line of scrimmage, I could fall for like 4 yards. You know what I mean? Like just kind of reach the ball out or fall forward and you're kind of gaining yards in the green. So yeah, it was actually a fun offense to play in because you always had the ball, you're making decisions, and it was cool that way.
So when schools start coming around to you, what position are they recruiting you for? I mean, because at UW, you were recruited by the tight ends coach. You were recruited by Mickey Turner, I think, right? And but you ended up as an offensive lineman. But I feel like you could have been a linebacker. You could have been a freaking defensive end, a tight end. Like, who recruited you to be what?
So my first scholarship was from Illinois, University of Illinois, and it was actually as a quarterback. Now I don't know how long that would have actually followed through. Like I would have showed up on campus, they would have been like, probably, we're going to make the switch. But I had like a wide range of positions that I was being recruited as. Like Iowa wanted me as an O-lineman, Wisconsin wanted me as a tight end, Syracuse wanted me as a D lineman. Like it was just kind of all over the place. And I just kind of looked at it like, let's go into the building, get the strength and conditioning, under my feet, nutrition, school, the whole thing, and then just see kind of what happens. Like, I think that you kind of find your natural position at some point. And thankfully, that happened with me and Coach Christ and Coach Rudolph and Coach Turner pretty early on in my college career.
But you were being recruited by the Anderson era first?
Yes. So I committed to Coach Anderson, Jeff Jenick, TJ Woods, that staff. And they left. I'll never forget this. So they had just, won whenever it was. I think they won 9 or 10 games. They're going to the Big Ten championship. They lose that game. Coach Anderson leaves like 3 days later on a Wednesday.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm driving a few of my buddies home. And Jared, one of my friends, is like, hey, dude, like Gary Anderson just left Wisconsin. He's going to Oregon State. And I'm like, what? Like, he's in the back seat. I'm driving. I'm like, yeah, it's pretty funny. And then he's like, no, dude, he shows me his phone. And you're like, holy crap. Like, that was like completely unexpected. Didn't hear anything from any coaches and whatever. So, but I made that decision to go to Wisconsin, not just for football. I felt like it was just a great fit for everything that I was looking for in terms of football, academics, the social life, the city. Like, it was just perfect. And so I never really wavered in terms of like, hey, I'm going to look at a bunch of different schools and open it back up. Like, I trusted Coach Alvarez to make a great decision on who to hire. Like, it was really a no-brainer to stay committed, if that makes sense.
What was your official visit like, and who was your host?
My official visit, it was actually a lot don't say.
You don't say. It was a lot of fun. Wow.
Yeah.
Shocked.
My host was Troy Fumagalli, who ended up being one of my best friends in school and still today. So if I remember correctly, they played Minnesota. They won that game, like Big Ten West champs, like kind of celebrating the whole thing. Had dinner with my parents, Coach Jenick, Coach Woods. And if you walk into the Fetzer Center, that like trophy room to the right, it was in there, which was pretty sweet. And then after that, like, got the opportunity to go out and hang out with the fellas, and got to meet, like Melvin, and there's Denzel Doe, just a bunch of guys on the team. And as an incoming recruiter, you're like, this is sweet. You get to meet the guys. And so every visit, I mean, you guys know, every visit you go there, it's awesome. Like, it never disappoints, whether you're going to a game, going out, like, it's always a good time.
Wait, David, when does Coach Chris call you? Like, when do you hear, like, does anyone call you from the Anderson crew saying like, hey, dude, we're out? And does Mickey Turner call you in like a week, 2 weeks? Like, what's that window of time that you're kind of sitting there like wondering what's happening? Sorry, Matt.
So,
no, please. That's an excellent question. And I should have.
Yeah. I would say this. I got a call, I want to say, from TJ Woods the night that Coach Anderson left. It was like a Wednesday or something. And he was just like, dude, we're all kind of blindsided. I would love to stay at Wisconsin, but like Coach Anderson, I've been with him my whole, career. Like, I'm probably going to follow him to Oregon State. And then state of Wisconsin has those restrictions. It's like 2 weeks. You have to post the job. And then, so there was kind of that like long window of that vacancy, if that makes sense. And so Coach Chris ended up calling me, I want to say right after or during the Outback Bowl, and got like an unknown number from a 608 area code. I'm like, this has got to be somebody from the staff. You know what I mean? So
yeah.
Pick up, and he's like, hey, this is Coach Chris. And I'm like, Coach, like, great to hear from you. Like,
but did you know he was the coach?
Yeah, I think at that point it had been announced.
Okay.
That he was going to be the hire. And then, yeah, I that moved pretty quickly after January 1st or whatever it was. Coach Turner ends up coming to my house with Coach Rudolph. We do kind of like the in-home visit, and you guys know how it is. Like, when they first got hired, they got to keep players. They got a bunch of stuff on their hands that they got to handle. And so that was like, I had already expressed like, hey, I want to stay and stay committed. And they expressed the same. So it was like kind of done, if that makes sense. And I was like, hey, go worry about, another guy or whatever you got to do for your family. So I would say, like a 3-week window of waiting or whatever, but it moved quickly and it ended up working out great.
That's wild. I mean, that's craziness. I would assume like you could relate to the guys now then, with maybe not the complete like turmoil throughout the whole year, but you can relate to the switching of positions and kind of just like, hey, do you want to stick with the program and the guys in the room compared to, maybe find somewhere else?
I think that, and this is going to sound kind of wild, but, and this for sure, like I 100% knew and trusted that Coach Alvarez was going to bring in a good coach. Like he always talked about his short list of coaches. And so one thing that I think that has spilled over from generations of Wisconsin football that have played for Coach Alvarez and Bielema and Anderson and Christ is like always being prepared. And that, that was like, I see better than I hear from Coach Alvarez, right? Like he came in prepared, had his guy ready to go. And, it was a perfect fit.
You couldn't have summed it up better. It literally was a perfect fit. And he literally had him like, that's what's so special about Coach Alvarez. Like, he'd call a dude and he'd be like, yeah, I'm out. I'll be there in a couple hours.
Like the whole don't flinch, right? Like
Alvarez is a special dude, and just to be around him, like it's just, I think everyone's just lucky to have spent whatever time football wise with him, but even off the field with him. Wait, so you show up, you're a skinny, tall guy, not that skinny.
I was pretty skinny.
We'll get back to Matt Perkins' question, because it's really interesting. Like, dude, you gained a ton of weight. Like, what were you just enjoying yourself too much? Were you like hitting the weight room hard? Did it just, some people just start growing at a different time? Like, what was happening your freshman year?
So when I was in high school, I never lifted weights. I played football, I played basketball, and then I didn't play baseball in high school, but in the spring you have AAU basketball, you have like passing league, 7-on-7 stuff, and then it leads like into the first week of summer, and you have from like 8 until 1 p.m. every day, you got football camp and basketball camp, and then later that day you've got summer league games, and it was a nonstop of those two sports that I was invested in year round, right? And so when I got to Wisconsin, I can remember like when Coach Rudolph and Coach Turner came in and did that in-home visit after they had gotten hired. They had asked me like, what's your max bench? What's your max clean? Like, and I had no idea. And I just spit out a number, and it was probably like, whoa, this kid, like probably has never sniffed a weight room. So when I got there, that was kind of like the big transition. I started training. I started, consistently lifting weights, and was in Coach Kalaji's strength program. And then you're eating consistently. You got protein shakes. Like I just naturally went from like 240, 245 to like 255 midway through the season. And then you go through that, winter conditioning, you're whatever it was, 260, 265. And by no means like was I going to be a tight end. Like Coach Chris always joked with me, like if you drop a ball and put knee braces in your locker, it's over. Like, and it was funny, like guys got a chuckle out of it, but like I knew that was the end of my trajectory as a player. Like, maybe we had 3 or 4 tight ends, but I knew that I was eventually going to be an O-lineman. And so long-winded answer, but nutrition, training consistently, kind of being in that environment just made me blow up in weight.
So then during that redshirt year, though, like during practice, scout team, are you running with the tight ends or are you running with the offensive linemen?
Tight ends.
You're running with the tight ends, but then then spring balls when you switch to offensive line?
So after that spring ball, so I had I had a training camp, a season, a winter conditioning, and a spring ball at tight end. Like maybe the third or fourth day of summer workouts, I'm sitting in Psych 202 and Coach Turner texts me. He's like, hey, come up to the office after class. And I'm like, oh my gosh, it's over. Like I'm going to O-line. And that's exactly what happened. I sat in his office. He's like, go over to Coach Rudolph. He wants to say hi to you. I'm like, okay.
And then boom, you're an O-lineman before you even knew it.
Yep.
Yeah, but then like you're switching over. It's in the summer. All of a sudden, you're playing offensive line in the first game of Lambeau Field. You're playing against, LSU and Lambeau Field. You're starting like a couple games into the season. Like you took to it pretty quickly, David. How did that happen?
That's a good question. I don't know. I think I got really lucky. Like a lot of times when I reflect on my time at Wisconsin, like I got really lucky. A lot of like how you get your opportunity is timing and luck in terms of injuries, right? That happened for me as a redshirt freshman because Jake Maxwell got a shoulder injury and had to have surgery. So I don't know if I was per se the first. I certainly wasn't ready to play, but I had to play because we just didn't have enough guys, right? And so Coach Rudolph was an incredible coach. I had Al Johnson. Like I just got really lucky with my coaches and who was involved in trying to get me to be an O-lineman. And then it doesn't hurt that Ryan Ramczyk was like the biggest freak show ever that I played with, because he everything that you wanted as a coach, you could just point to Ryan on film and say, this is how I want it done, or this is how it should look. And it's not going to look like that because it's Ramczyk, but it was a great thing for me to be able to, actually see it happen and be like, okay, how can I do it my way? If that makes sense.
No, that's a pretty crazy, dude. What gives you that confidence? An O-line is a confidence. Like you need confidence to be an O-line. You can't just go out there and be like an introvert. I don't. That's not the right term, but
sure.
How do you gain that confidence in this switch? You're putting on weight. You're starting at Lambeau Field, dude. Like I'm not gonna lie. I started my second year and we played Fresno State at home. Like you can build confidence in that pretty easily, but going to Lambeau and like playing in front of, I was there by the way, so I appreciate your skill set for beating LSU. It's beautiful at Lambeau, but dude, how do you build that confidence, man?
It's a great question. The short answer is we went against some incredible players. Like when I was there, it was Joe Schobert, Big Ten linebacker of the year, TJ Watt, Vince, like those guys were all draft picks, great players. Like, so in a sense, your confidence goes from like, you're getting your ass kicked in practice by these guys. And then you get to the game and it's actually way easier because those guys are so good at what they do. So after, a few starts and you're kind of learning like, okay, I can get the job done. It's not what it needs to be right now in my career, but because you're going against such great players in practice, you're sharpening that blade in a way that makes it easier in games.
Who's the toughest guy to block in practice that you went against?
Oh,
edge rush, one-on-one, it's him and you to get to the quarterback.
Yeah, I would say TJ, because TJ could run you over. Like if you're playing tackle, whether you're in college or the NFL, like if you don't fear a guy's bull rush, that eliminates half of their plan, if that makes sense. And so the thing about TJ that was so different was he was quick, he was explosive, he had great use of his hands, but he could run you over because he had that power. Like that was way different than, not way different, but different than the other guys you would go against in practice.
But you could say it, dude. He's a freak.
He's a freak.
He's way different. He's way different. That whole family's way different. I want to drink the water they're drinking.
No doubt.
So then what, after your first playing year, what gives you that, like, what's the huge jump to being like the beast that you became?
So going back to kind of how naive I am, like, spring ball, I played left tackle. I played right tackle that redshirt freshman year, and then Coach Rudolph moves me to the left. And just with shuffling, like players, like Michael Dieter ended up playing left tackle that season, just because we had more interior guys, less tackles. So I ended up moving back to tackle, but there was a lot of competition, at least in my eyes, that offseason and training camp of like Patrick Castle and Cole Van Lanen, like Coach Rudolph and Coach Johnson were like pushing those guys to play. And so you're thinking to yourself, like, man, like I've got to be on my stuff if I want to play this season. And so that was like kind of the main message of that offseason and training camp was like, hey, this competition, you know, the best five are going to play. And so in your head, like, there's no like slotted players of, yeah, I played whatever and how many starts I had the year before, but that didn't mean anything because he just said, you know, best five are going to play. So the competition aspect, and then, yeah, I mean, just you're going against great players. I mean, that run we had in 16-17 was awesome. And we had great defenses, great offenses. And so I really think that it was the environment that I was in, the coaching that I got, and then just being pushed by guys around you.
Believe in Badgers is excited to be brought to you by Infinigods. Infinigods is a gaming studio with a suite of free, fun-to-play games centered around ancient mythologies and civilizations. Visit Infinigods.com to play their first game, Infinimerge, and learn about their upcoming tower defense game. Play for fun or play to compete and take your shot at winning digital collectibles. That's Infinigods at Infinigods.com, unleashing the power of blockchain games. So what are you doing in this time? Like, what are you doing off the field? Hey, you mentioned Patrick Castle, which is a name I hadn't heard in a minute. Everything I've ever heard is that he's like a genius, like beyond genius, like one of the smartest dudes ever.
Yes.
What do you have a Patrick Castle story for us? Because I know that seems random, but it's like, do you have an example of him being a genius?
So he, after the 2017 season, this was before he left the team because he was interning somewhere crazy, right? But he had to leave practice on a certain day early because he was in Calc 3 or something. And you're just like, dude, oh my gosh. And he, not only was he smart, but he was really, like if you told him something or a technique, like he could pick it up like that. Like that's how gifted he was, like with that stuff. But when he said he was in Calc 3, you're just like, dude, what? You know, I think he's like in some sort of engineering for like the medical sciences. Like he's killing it right now, doing a great job. But you knew, I mean, from the jump that this guy was different, you know?
That's awesome. That's fantastic. So yeah. And it's funny because like your class, I think is also really interesting. Like, I think you're the fifth guy from your recruiting class that Bernie and I have had on. We've had Chris Orr, we've had Dave Mormon, we've had Alec Ingold, we've had a bunch of guys here. I think your class is really interesting because of that transition, right, from Anderson to Chris, and so many of you guys stayed together. What's that bond? Can you like describe that bond that you guys have?
Yeah, we still have a group chat that we kind of every once in a while we get after each other, but that class was really special from the standpoint I've really felt like we everybody lived together. Like we had 2 houses, 3 houses, whatever it was. And we were always at each other's places, like hanging out. Like we used to go to like once a year, we would go to a baseball game. So one year we went to a Cubs game, one year we went to a Sox game. We were just like really close off the field too. And I think that, that obviously paid into the success that we had, when we were redshirt freshmen and sophomores, because, Alex is playing, Dietz is playing, I'm playing. Like there are guys from that group, that class that were playing meaningful snaps, Chris Orr. So yeah, just like camaraderie and being around each other. I mean, that really does matter.
David, explain, because I feel like across the board, that's something that a lot of football guys share is that bond, which is funny because you spend 10 hours at the stadium at least, and then you literally drive home on your scooter to go stay with the dudes who you've seen for 10 hours during the day. And I think in my entire time, I only lived with one person who was not a football player. I think that's very right. So like a total of 20 guys who were football guys and everyone else wasn't. And in some despicable places too. But the bond that you're talking about, like how special is that at Wisconsin? I mean, I can't speak for other ones, but what does it mean to still be such good friends with all these guys who you like literally did everything with?
So like my 2 best friends to this day are Kyle Peniston and John Dietzen. They were two of my roommates when we were in college. And it's kind of funny, not funny, but the Badger Brotherhood that's now kind of that was created pretty recently for guys that have left, like Alec James is kind of spearheading that. I feel like that was always there, right? Like the camaraderie, the tightness that you have with the guys in your class and on those teams, right? Like I can remember going to the Hub on State Street and going to hang out with Fumagalli and Dooley and Joe Ferg and those guys and just like no one cared like where you were from, no one cared like how old you were, or like what your mate, like everyone just cared about the guys. And so that camaraderie, like it's just I don't know if it's different anywhere else in college, but I think that really is one of the unique things about Wisconsin is, how the lessons you learn while you play, but also the memories you make with your guys. You know what I mean? So it's hard to put into words like your experience, like, as you know, like, but you just are so grateful and appreciative that you went through it.
Yeah, I have one random question. You walk into a bar and you see Leon Jacobs. What's your first thought?
So Leon was also included in that. And
I know. Oh my God. If you saw Sitchy at a bar too, if you saw those two at a bar, you better run away.
I know they're immediately coming up to me and they're giving me some crap about something. Like, and it's probably from our time in Wisconsin. Like, so that a couple training camps when those guys were, going into the 2017 season, I had gotten like 2 or 3 holding penalties, or I forget, like it was maybe early on in the season, I had gotten a couple holding penalties. No, it was false starts. And so my nickname was Jumpin' Dave. And so anytime that season I flinched or like went off sides, like the entire defensive sideline would yell like Jumpin' Dave. And just so if I walked into a bar with those guys, I would immediately hear that, like nickname they had for me and just get a good chuckle out of it. Yeah.
Jumpin' Dave. That's fantastic. That's absolutely fantastic. And you talk about sort of like that locker room camaraderie is very different at the NFL level than the college level, isn't it? It's like, is it like from everything we hear, it's almost like night and day. You don't get the same sort of relationships.
Yeah. We talked about it earlier, but like you get done with being at the facility and practice and meetings and you go home with your guys, you hop on your scooter, you go back to your house or your apartment with your guys. And so you're never not around, your teammates and the guys that you live with. And when you're in the NFL, it's like, for example, I wouldn't say it's completely different, but it's certainly different because guys got families, guys live half hour away, whatever it is. Right. And so one thing that I think that I appreciate about my time at the Rams is every Thursday we would have dinner club. And so after practice, like a group of guys would go out and get dinner with each other and try to create that college camaraderie that you're super close with your unit or different guys on the team. And because it's really hard to get guys from, your position group or your offense or, the defense or the team, because, everyone's got families, you got to take care of your body, you got to eat, it's just harder to get those moments.
Yeah, what was it like to block for one of the best running backs ever at Wisconsin and Jonathan Taylor?
He made us way better than we actually were, I think. He, and in all seriousness, like everyone talks about the scrimmage, and this is a funny story. Like the scrimmage in training camp in the third or fourth week before the season actually starts, we would scrimmage ones versus twos versus ones, offense and defense, right? And JT went crazy. Like he scored, like he had broken off 2 long runs. He caught that one-handed screen pass that's kind of infamous. And I can remember being like in practice being like, wow, our twos are killing our ones right now on defense. And I'm like concerned. And then I remember being in the meeting room like the next day, we're watching that film, and I asked Coach Rudolph, I'm like, hey, is this guy like gonna play for us like a little bit this year? And he kind of looked at me like the no shit statement of the day, like, yeah, dude, this guy's gonna be awesome, The thing about JT though that is, I think, different, like that makes him different, is he cared so much about the guys, and especially the O-line. Like I can remember we played them 2 years ago in Indy, and I just seeing him, he's got one of those smiles that lights up the room, and seeing him just like brings back all those memories, and you give him a big hug and you're like, man, this is kind of crazy. Right. But he was so good at making people miss and impossible to bring him to the ground. So his speed, his power, his ability to kind of shifty, make you miss, like, I think he's the greatest running back in the history of college football. If he had that one more year and played, he would have broken, every rushing record ever, just a really special, unique guy.
Yeah, and a special person, like you said, from what everyone has talked about. But let's transition, as we don't have a ton of time left, to moving to the draft into the league. The draft is coming up right now. The draft is next week as we are here talking. What was your draft weekend experience? And if you could give one piece of advice to, especially Joe Tippmann, offensive lineman from the Badgers, who's entered into the draft right now, what piece of advice would you give them?
I had a little bit of a unique experience because of my shoulder injury. I didn't really know where I was going to get drafted, and I had a pretty wide range. It was like second round through the fifth. And so everyone says like, oh yeah, like I'll be okay with if I fall. Like you're not going to be okay with if, you fall, right? My biggest piece of advice is like, I was so lucky to be drafted by the Rams, period. I went into a organization that was patient. You know, you're going to suck at first. Like, that's okay. Like, keep working. So my biggest piece of advice to Joe is like, you're going to go to a team that really wants you, and just trust that they're going to take care of you from the standpoint of they're going to give you resources to be successful. They're going to be patient. Like, just soak it all in and try to enjoy it.
So you get drafted by the Rams. Rob is already on the team. Now, you guys didn't overlap at Wisconsin. You guys missed each other, I think, like by a year or so. But do you guys, I'm sure you guys have some like mutual connections. Is he someone that takes you under his wing? Or is there other guys on the team who are sort of like bringing you into the NFL family?
100%. So Kyle Costigan and him were best friends in college, lived together. He was his right guard. And he was my strength coach. And so I was really close with Costi during my time at Wisconsin. And so when I got drafted by the Rams, immediately got a text from Rob, like, hey man, like, really pumped for you. Love to have you in the room. Like, it's going to be awesome. And just hearing that from a vet, a guy that you kind of have a mutual connection with, made that transition just way easier.
Did you do the same thing from when Logan got drafted last year?
100%. Well, I played with Logan too. Yeah. So it's kind of funny. Like, I texted him like a couple months before the draft because Austin Corbett, our right guard, had gotten signed by the Carolina Panthers. And so we had, you know, kind of a void in that position. Right. And so I texted him, I'm like, dude, I don't know what it is, but I got this feeling that you're going to be a Ram. And when he got drafted, like, blowing him up, like, I told you so, dude. Like, this is crazy. But yeah, I tried as much as I could to take care of him and, you know, I guess give knowledge to him from the mistakes that I made when I was a rookie.
What's been the biggest transition from college to the NFL?
So I think it's this. When you're in college, I saw 3 guys a year out of your 12 games that were big-time NFL players. Rashawn Gary, Anthony Nelson, Nick Bosa, in terms of edge rushers, right? When you play in the NFL, every single week is an elite edge rusher or interior player. There's no, you know, I don't want to say week off, but there's no like exhale moments in the NFL. Every week is going to be a challenge. So that's probably the biggest difference, is just the level of competition week in and week out. Everybody's good, if that makes sense.
Yeah. I mean, you go from playing against rosters that have, you know, even in Ohio State has, you know, even if they have 30 guys who will eventually get drafted, but 30 guys, every NFL roster has 53 NFL players on it, right? You know, it's you know, they talk about the same thing. That's why it's always ridiculous to say, oh, can Alabama or Georgia beat like the worst NFL team? No, they can't, and it's not even close for that exact reason that you mentioned. So,
you may play against like a Nick Bosa, but you may play him when he's a freshman, like not when he's a senior. You know what I mean? So that's kind of the difference.
Yeah. So we got to talk about the Super Bowl run. You guys traded for Matt Stafford in, you know, off season. Les Snead has my favorite mug of all time. And for those of you who don't know, general manager Les Snead of the Rams had a mug that says, I'm going to have to mark this them picks. And it was the strategy, and it paid off. Did you guys go into that year knowing that like this is our year? Was there like a different feeling about it when you guys entered camp, or how did that sort of all coalesce?
I think that did I think that we were I knew that we were going to be in that contention position, right? And so like, to put it into perspective, like that season was 21 games. And so many things have to go your way to win a Super Bowl. The number one thing being health, right? And so the additions that we made late in the season, Von Miller, OBJ, et cetera, like when those moves were made, you were kind of like, okay, we're going all in to win this. You know what I mean? And so when we traded for Matthew, I think that number one, you were like, okay, this is kind of like the first step of, I guess you'd say commitment to like, this is the all in, we're going to win it this year. You know what I mean? So that year was crazy from that perspective. But two, like we got really lucky that a lot of guys stayed healthy. You know what I mean? So, and then to win it all in like your home stadium. I mean, what a storybook ending, right? So all in all, just like an incredible year and a lot of great guys and great memories and something you'll never forget.
What's it like when like a superstar shows up in the locker room like a OBJ?
Yeah, it's funny. He was one of my all-time favorite teammates. Like there was a lot of stuff I think written about him from his time in Cleveland. He was an awesome teammate. Cared about the guys, cared about the team, like did everything in his power to do his part. Like, that's what kind of sucks about, I guess, the perspective you're given from when they're, coming to a different team, coming from a different team. Like, one of my all-time favorite guys, like never treated anybody like different, if that makes sense. Like, everybody that was in that locker room, Vaughn, like, the big name guys, they were all awesome people. And so, just really grateful to have been part of, their story too. Like,
I mean, there's a half dozen Hall of Famers on that team too. I mean, like, I think that the underrated thing about the team is like Aaron Donald, Andrew Whitworth, Von Miller, Jalen Ramsey are all first ballot, no doubt Hall of Famers without a doubt. I think Stafford's probably a Hall of Famer. Like that's 5 right there. There are more dudes. Like we can go on and on and on about them. Yeah. But now you have come to the holy land of Buffalo, and you just signed with the Bills. What made you choose Buffalo?
So, I had some familiarity with Aaron Cromer, my O-line coach right now. And I really think the world of him as an offensive line coach, and I credit him really with all the success I've had. As a professional, he was my O-line coach my first 2 years in the league. And I just think that getting back to his techniques and his fundamentals, the way he teaches the game, like was just a no-brainer for me. So, and, number two is it's a really good team, that's in a position to win another championship. So, it was just a perfect fit, kind of like what we were talking about earlier with recruiting. Like, I just felt like it was a great fit with the familiarity of techniques and fundamentals that Cromer teaches, and then being on a great team. Like, it was just an awesome chance I couldn't turn down.
Got a snowblower or a shovel?
So I'm a shoveler. I don't think I can be a shoveler in Buffalo with the amount of snow you get. But I heard that a lot of people, there's like a company that they don't shovel, they don't snowblow, they just take a truck and put put one of the big whatever shovel pieces on the front of it and just blow your driveway with all the stuff on it. So I don't know. That's going to be an interesting. It's going to be an interesting winter from the.
You're probably going to need a snowmobile, or at least an ATV with a lot of ground clearance. Just warning you now. I hope you've got 4-wheel drive, chains. It's going to be a lot of fun. It's going to be a lot of fun. Okay, so we'll get you out of here. I know you have a limited amount of time. Quickly, first thought when you heard that Luke Fickell was going to be the coach of the Badgers. What's the first thing that popped in your mind?
The truth is, like, I felt like, as much as it's bittersweet, right? Like Coach Chris, I've got so much love and respect and admiration for him and his staff, and I owe him everything to why I'm here in the position I am. But when that decision was made, I'm just a fan at this point, right? Like, my opinion doesn't matter, but I really think that Coach Fickell is going to take that program to the next level. He has kind of familiarity and has proven it, right? He's taken Cincinnati to the playoff. He's got a great track record in recruiting and developing players. Like, is it going to be different than what fans are accustomed to offensively? No question. But he's hired great coaches that have proven every step along the way. So I'm excited. I think it's going to be awesome.
Yes, I agree with you. I think the culture will continue to be Wisconsin with like an elevated status. That's what I'm hoping. I'm hoping like, the lunch pail, we're going to grind it out and just beat you up type of mentality is still Wisconsin's mentality. I think we'll be more flashy and pretty along with, our grit. But I don't want to lose that, right? Like we're built on, we're just going to humble whoever's in front of us. I think you'll just see a little bit different. But from what I appreciate about, you mentioned Alec James, is he's really working hard to bring everyone back together who's ever played football. So I think that's cool. Like we've never seen that before for the past 20 years that I've been out. Now you're seeing like, hey, come to this. And I think that's important when you're trying to keep the culture and then build this new culture that I think is going to be just as good. And I think you're right. I think Fickell's the person guy for it. I'm a Coach Chris fan. I was a Jimmy fan. But I'm also not a coach and I don't have any type of voting rights. So, they do what they do and you just kind of sit here. And now I think with what we're seeing and everything, I mean, how could you be upset? It seems like Wisconsin taking a whole new step in the right direction.
Seems like there's just this incredible like energy right now around the program. Like I'm not there. I can't feel it, but just from what I talking with guys and just seeing what's posted now and just kind of the vibe around that program, it just seems like everyone's really excited and energized about, Coach Fickell, his staff, and what's coming down the line. So I'm really excited about the future of the program. I think it's going to be, and kind of going back to what we said about Coach Alvarez, like, I got the same feelings about Chris McIntosh that I do, Coach Alvarez making those decisions. So I think it's going to be awesome.
So my final question, you're coming down, you're the only New York team in Buffalo. You're going to fly over to New Jersey and go play the Bricklayers, the Jets. What are you so excited about the fans? They're the worst fans ever, and I'm one of them. What do you? First off, that conference is a hard conference now. Like no one's like laid down and the Jets used to be, but they're no joke anymore, even though they lose a bunch of games. But what are you most excited about playing in this division? Seeing like coming down to play the Jets, which might be, it's like the Eagles, playing the Eagles, but we're a little bit better than them, I think. Like, what are you so excited about this division?
They were just in the Super Bowl, Bernie. The Eagles were just in the Super Bowl.
Yeah, but they like throw snowballs with batteries in them at like,
that's true. As fans,
yeah,
they're worse. As fans, they're worse, but as a team, they're better.
Oh, as a team, they're better, but as a fan base, they're like the worst. they're a little step lower than Jets fans.
To your point, it's a really good division, like a really, really good division. And so I know there's a lot of talk about Rodgers joining the Jets and stuff. I would imagine that deal is going to get done, right? That only elevates the Jets to, a contender franchise. We know about the Dolphins. And then, the Patriots are still a very good franchise as well. So there's no way you look at it. It's going to be like, it reminds me of the year we won the Super Bowl, the NFC West. The NFC West was loaded that year. 3 teams made the playoffs. Like, I wouldn't be surprised if that's kind of the same case in this division. It's a great division. And so I think the first thing I think of is just there's great competition and, you got to play them twice a year. So I don't think so much about like like where we're going to play and the fans and stuff. I know it's going to be a great time and you're going to hear some crazy stuff, but I think ultimately, like, you just look at the product on the field and you're saying this is a great team with great scheme and great players, and it's going to be a good challenge. You know what I mean? So I am looking forward to, though, I will say, going to New Jersey to play those guys. It'll be fun.
Are you excited to be with Vaughn again?
It's funny. He came up to me. He's like, dude, like, good to see you. And he's like, they're stealing all the Rams guys. And I'm like, this is, hilarious that, we're on the same team again. But, he is, I think he and Aaron Donald are the two freakiest guys I ever played with. And seeing them on the same team and the same D line together, going against them was like surreal almost, so I'm pumped to be his teammate again. I think he's an awesome guy, awesome leader, and a great player, obviously.
Awesome. Well, I think we're going to have to wrap it up there. Unfortunately, I've got 1,000 more questions. I literally have a document with Bernie will test like really dozens and dozens more questions. You've got a new place to move into in Buffalo. We have jobs to get back to, but David, we cannot thank you enough for spending some time with us here today. It's truly been a pleasure.
Yeah, David, thank you.
I mean, this is so much fun, guys. Thanks for having me on. And I've seen kind of what you guys have done with the pod, and the guests you've had on. You guys are doing an awesome job, and it was just so much fun to be part of it. So congrats to you guys.
That.
Well, thank you. We really appreciate that. We love what we do. And, I would love to hear some more of like your class guys together, like you and Demo and who else ever come back together. Really hear some about that stuff.
I got to text Demo. I know he shows up on the pod every once in a while. I'm a little bummed he wasn't on.
Yeah, well, we'll get him next time.
Yeah, there you go.
So absolutely. Well, we appreciate everyone for tuning in here to the podcast on the Believe Podcast Network, presented by betonline.ag. Until next time, on Wisconsin.
On Wisconsin.
No doubt.